Okay, we're nearly there. This is the last one. So in this section, we're going to look at Eysenk's biosocial theory of crime. And Eysenck, again, is one of the foremost researchers in looking at theories of crime. So he came up with this idea, and he was probably most famous for saying that certain races have genetically a lower intelligence than others. Of course, this was not a popular theory and was very flawed, and he did receive death threats about this. But biosocial theory is something about our biology and genetic influence, but also influence by our social environment. That's what biosocial means. Constitutional factors is all about what we look like, and we'll go through these one at a time. So XXY, this is Eysenk's theory of genetics. XYY is an extra Y chromosome and it only affects males. And as it says on the screen, this theory is now defunct, but this was the theory at the time, and it is real about the chromosomes. It has been suggested that these men are more aggressive and are more likely to be involved in crime. This theory has been widely criticised and dismissed, so it does not explain those who do have the extra chromosome and don't go on to commit violent crime. So research has shown this one not to be true. In twin studies, there is a genetic basis that monozygotic twins share 100% of their genes, so it should show that they are both criminal if there is a genetic basis. A 0.7 correlation shows that it is more likely, but it doesn't show that it's definitely going to happen. Because what other reasons could there be for this to happen? Well, if they're twins and they're exactly the same, they're going to be probably raised the same, treated the same. They'll probably even hang out together and do the same things. So that's not genetic, that's environmental. What might be different for dizygotic twins who only have a 0.4, so a relatively low correlation? Well, they don't look the same, so they could be treated differently. And in the case of my twin grandchildren, they're a boy and a girl, so going to be treated totally differently. Constitutional factors was all about the body types. So he came up with this thing about these somatypes, and there's three of them: endomorphs, ectomorphs, and mesomorphs. So somatypes is about the structure or the build of a person rather than the mind, especially to the extent to which it exhibits the characteristics of an endomorph, ectomorph, or mesomorph. And this is what they look like. And I've heard this term recently when it comes to weight loss and fitness. So ectomorph, commonly the body shape of models, slim-boned, long-limbed, and have very little body fat and little muscle. They find it difficult to gain weight or add muscle. They're said to be highly invested in nervous and cerebral features, not likely to commit crime at all. Mesomorphs, the athletic, strong, compact, and naturally lean body. Often shoulders are wider than their hips, and women tend to have an hourglass figure. This is the body type more likely to be violent. Endomorph, large amount of fat and difficulty losing that fat. They gain weight easily, oh yeah, and that includes muscle weight, oh no. They are said to be gut dominant, more likely to be shoplifters, etc., probably after the chocolates. So there is some evidence to suggest that there is a link here, but it is very tenuous at best. Those of you who've done a previous course will know about Lombroso, who also suggested that people who look a certain way are criminal. But what if we as a society treat people that way and tell them that they're bad and put them in jail? How do you think that they are going to behave? Well, obviously there's lots of criminals, lots of criticism of this theory. Firstly, it was only based on the body shapes of men, and women weren't included at all. So therefore, instant controversy is created between the body types of women and crime patterns. The body shape of mesomorphs, who Sheldon stated were more likely to be violent offenders, was also caused by there being less intelligence, which is really, really wrong. He claimed that this was all due to inherited inferior biology, and totally ignored the environment that the delinquents that he studied were raised in and brought up in. The third part of Eysenk's theories is personality. And this is really, really quite famous. So there's three components: psychoticism, extroversion, and neuroticism. And drawing of the pen is there because that's a little easy way to remember what this theory is. So you can be high or low in each of them, but he argued that if you're high on any of these, but particularly all three, then you are more likely to be criminal. Psychoticism is typified by aggressiveness and interpersonal hostility, believed by Eysenck to be linked to increased vulnerability to psychosis such as schizophrenia. And it can be characterised by traits such as impulsivity and sensation seeking. Extroversion, characterised as someone who is sociable, talkative, assertive and excitable. And neuroticism, these are the people who have more depressed moods. They're emotionally unstable. They have feelings of guilt, envy, anger, fear, frustration, jealousy, loneliness, and anxiety more frequently and more severely than other individuals. And finally came environmental influences or socialisation. And this is based on Pavlov's classical conditioning principles. And there's a YouTube clip there that for you to watch that's not very long, so please watch that clip. Pavlov argued that people had not been socialised properly and that this can be taught. Actually, Eysenck argued that, not Pavlov. Pavlov was doing with the dogs and their saliva. And that they can be taught to respond differently using the classical conditioning techniques. But they're much more difficult to socialise. Psychotic people are less likely to respond to rewards, so they are going to be really hard to socialise. And a neurotic person is very emotional and won't socialise easily due to being overly anxious and neurotic and emotional. So psychoticism, non-conforming and antisocial activities. This is where all your serial killers would fit. Extroverts, they learn more slowly than introverts, probably because we don't shut up for long enough to listen. Therefore, we're more likely to be criminal, apparently. And in neuroticism, the emotionality of the people makes it harder to socialise and condition the person. So they're emotional, volatile and hyper-reactive and will overreact and respond inappropriately to adverse situations. And I think this might be the last one we're looking at, which is social learning theory. And again, this is a really important theory for you to understand. It is really, really popular in criminology because it is all about how we learn. This is a psychological theory. And we learn from observing others' behaviour and then we model that behaviour. So I'm sure you've all heard the saying, monkey see, monkey do. But we look to see what the consequences are of other people's behaviour before copying them. So if I see someone do something wrong and not get any punishment, then I may consider doing it too. And this is called vicarious reinforcement. So there's three aspects: the external reinforcement, vicarious and self-reinforcement. So external reinforcement, receiving and looking for the approval from parents or peers to good behaviour. So think about a child in a shop nagging a parent to buy them something. The parent relents and gives it to them. So they've got that external reinforcement for that nagging behaviour. So next time you go to the shops, you know what's going to happen. Conversely, if your child does really, really well at school and they may get an award or something or do really well in an exam, they will get some really good reinforcement from the parents in the way of approval. So hopefully they will keep that behaviour going. Vicarious reinforcement, as I explained before, is repeating the behaviour of others for which they are being rewarded. And that could be good behaviour or bad behaviour. So seeing someone do something wrong and not get punishment could vicariously reinforce you doing it too. And self-reinforcement is rewarding yourself when a certain standard of performance has been attained or surpassed. So I'm really hoping that when you all finish your diploma, that you will do something really nice to reward yourselves for getting through it. Okay, I want you to watch this YouTube clip here, which is about the Bobo doll. This is one of the social learning beginnings. This happened in the 1960s, and it's a really, really interesting experiment done by Albert Bandura about children hitting a Bobo doll, and I had a Bobo doll when I was a child. So watch that and then come back. Okay, so did you notice there that not only did the child hit the doll in the same way as the adults, but they were really, really innovative in how they behaved violently towards the doll. So social learning theory of crime suggests observational learning takes place primarily in 3 places. Firstly, your family. We learn primarily from our family. So children will model violence and think it is normal. Their violence may become a normal reaction to stressful events if they see their parents using violence as a way to solve problems. Your prevalent subculture is your social group. So kids hang out with mates or friends, and they're more likely to behave the same as them and learn from them. And thirdly, you've got your cultural symbols which form part of the social environment, such as books and TVs. By the time by the time that the average child is 18 years old, they will have been exposed to 200,000 plus violent acts and 16,000 murders on TV, movies, games, etc. Of course, there is some research into this, but it is like the chicken and the egg. Does a child have a tendency towards violence first, or does the media cause it? And you have to ask the question, why do the vast majority of children see this sort of stuff and not go on to commit crime themselves? So, some research again, a sample of male arrestees in the US, if they have been exposed to child abuse, so if they were a victim of child abuse, they're not likely to commit intimate partner violence. If exposed to their father being violent to the mother and the mother is not fighting back, likely to commit intimate partner violence. If exposed to the mother being violent to the father and the father not fighting back, then less likely to commit intimate partner violence. And if they're exposed to both parents being violent, then they're likely to commit intimate partner violence. So you can see how social learning theory here in this sample of male arrestees shows that what they see as children is really, really going to have an effect on how they're going to behave as adults. Look, there are criticisms here. This can be an overly simplistic view to just say that as an individual, you are a passive receptor of learning processes, because it doesn't allow for purpose and meaning in what is seen or learned. It also doesn't take into account that the same event can be experienced very differently by different people, because it doesn't take into account the idea of free will, that no matter what has happened to us in the past, we have the free will to determine what our future is going to be and not repeat the mistakes that may have happened in the past. And it can't explain under what circumstances criminal behaviour will or will not be learned. So again, how can we explain those who are exposed and don't go on to commit crime? It's like I've known of kids who grow up in houses where their parents smoke and drink. They become adults and they don't do it themselves because they've seen what it's done to their parents' health. So it's just a little bit simplistic to say that people don't have free will. Okay, so today we learned that theories exist at multiple levels. There's a plethora of theories of crime, and there'll be more that we will be discussing and that you will learn in your future studies. No one theory is right all the time or can explain every single criminal or their behaviour. There's a complex interaction between all the factors, and most forensic psychologists will move between theories depending upon what the matter is that they are considering. Okay, that's all done for this week. Next week, we're going to be talking about juvenile delinquency. See you then.